Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of our Tactical Breakdown series, a show in which we look at players that have been linked to Arsenal in a statistical and analytical way with the help, of course, of some expert insight. I hope you're doing good and well and have enjoyed your weekend off from football. Not really. Of course, England did play and got bossed by Dominic Szoboszlai, of course. But in today's show, we're focusing on some altogether different positions and targets, and in particular, Youri Tielemans. Very happy that we've got some expert insight and some great statistical comparisons to make during the show. So please do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you are indeed new around here. We'll be doing constant updates and breakdowns on all of Arsenal's transfer targets with expert insight throughout the course of the summer transfer window. And if you aren't aware somehow, but we do our 8 a.m. shows updating you on all the latest Arsenal news and links as they happen. So without further ado, let's crack on with today's show, focusing on Youri Tielemans, Leicester City and Belgium international central midfielder that looks to be Arsenal's primary signing. But to get the insight and the expertise, we've gone to Leicester City fan and CBS Sports journalist Ben Jacobs to get the inside story on what is the latest about Youri Tielemans.
Well, Arsenal remain front runners to sign Youri Tielemans, and Mikel Arteta is confident of getting this deal over the line relatively early in the window, and that's going to be important for Arsenal because the longer they leave it, the more chance there is of other suitors trying to gatecrash the deal. And the reason why Arteta is so confident is because Arsenal have been working on Tielemans for the best part of a year with a view to this summer. I think it was clear that Leicester were not going to sell in January. And the fee will be between about 25 million, which is a bargain, and maybe 30 million. Leicester would prefer a range of suitors that they could offset against each other, because if they can get 4 or 5 million more in the mid-30s, then they'll make a small profit. I think they signed him for around 32 million. But it's unlikely the fee will be that high because he's into the final year of his contract. And there's no doubt Tielemans will go this summer, assuming that Leicester don't U-turn and decide just to let his contract run out. And I think that Arsenal see the opportunity to get a player at, let's just say for the sake of it, a third of the price of someone like Ruben Neves. And Tielemans brings goals, energy, and I still think that there's scope for Arteta to shape him into more of a rigid defensive midfielder, not necessarily across 90 minutes, but when Arsenal are looking to manage out games, Tielemans can kind of change and drop deeper and protect the defence. And that's an area where I really think he can work on and become more rigid in set moments in games when Arsenal don't need that more explosive box-to-box midfielder. He's a very intelligent footballer with excellent vision and a good dressing room influence as well. And Arteta, I think, has elevated his opinion of Tielemans even further. So in January, he was a player that he really wanted, and we all know that Arsenal need to strengthen in that area of midfield. But now I think that Arteta might even go so far as to be calling Tielemans his number one target, at least in the early part of the window, because this is a deal that Arsenal can and need to get done very quickly. So then in terms of other suitors, there's a couple from the Premier League who are circling as well, which again illustrates why Arsenal need to move fast in the market. One, the most long-standing one, has been Manchester United, but Tielemans has already made it clear to his people that he would prefer Arsenal to Manchester United. Erik ten Hag may be able to swoop in and try and change that, but Tielemans has got a long-standing belief that Arsenal is a bit more stable than Manchester United, but also from a personal point of view, he'd prefer to be in London rather than Manchester. And then Newcastle are moving onto Tielemans' radar. They've long admired him, but nothing is advanced there. They've not made any kind of formal approach. And again, if Tielemans doesn't want to go to Manchester, it's unlikely that he'll want to go to Newcastle, even if they throw a lot of money at the deal. But Arsenal will still want to be moving fast, because at the moment, the other suitors cannot offer Champions League football, which is really important, because if he gets a solid offer from, let's say, a Tottenham, and Conte has admired Tielemans as well, although again, there's nothing concrete there at the moment, that's when he may start saying, well, there's nothing really between these offers, and I want to play Champions League football. But at the moment, Leicester don't have Champions League football, Arsenal don't have Champions League football, Manchester United don't have Champions League football, and Newcastle United don't have Champions League football. So it's not a case of Tielemans holding out for Champions League football. The main suitors who are chasing after him simply don't have it. So when he moves, And I do think he moves this summer because I don't see Leicester just allowing his contract to run down. He's not going to be able to move to Champions League football. Outside of the Premier League, it is clear that Real Madrid have at least scouted Tielemans before, but there doesn't appear to be anything more than that. And people close to Tielemans in Belgium do speak of him being quite intrigued by La Liga. But if he was put off Arsenal when he moved to Monaco because of game time, and we're in a World Cup year, it's unlikely he's going to be playing too regularly at the moment at Real Madrid, because both Luka Modric and Toni Kroos are looking like staying at the Bernabeu. And as a consequence, there's a lot of central midfielders in that position. Casemiro is another one. And even if Tielemans was sort of more being signed for the longer term, in the short term, in that World Cup year, I don't see him playing too many games starting for Real Madrid. So that would be a factor, I think, in his thinking too, whereas at Arsenal, I believe that he'd be playing regularly. So Arsenal are specifically front runners because they have been talking to Tielemans people about a deal in personal terms for much longer than the other suitors, because Arteta and Edu are seemingly prepared to move quickly in the market as well, and because Tielemans is sold on Arteta's vision and style of football. Add to the mix that he wants to move to London if he is to stay in the Premier League, and if Arsenal move quickly before a suitor with Champions League football comes in, then I do think they will be able to make him one of their first, if not their first signing after the summer window opens. And then I think that the final thing to say in terms of aspects to this deal is just that Tielemans' people over the course really of the last year have actually tried to get him a move to Liverpool. And even though London may be of appeal, Liverpool as a football club is definitely in Tielemans' eyes something very special, and working under Klopp is of huge appeal. And Tielemans' people have never been afraid to put out information and rumours that Liverpool are interested and he's on their radar. Every time I've gone to Liverpool and put the Tielemans link, they've shot it down and said that it's all coming from Tielemans' people and there's no substance or truth to it. So you may hear Tielemans also linked with Liverpool, but Liverpool continue to shoot that down. And as a result, again, if Arsenal are decisive in the market, move quickly, table an official offer, and Tielemans is presented with an opportunity where all of his other suitors, as they are at the moment, do not have Champions League football, there's no reason why Arsenal can't get this done quickly. So it's one to watch over the coming weeks, and I believe that Arsenal will be very confident, as things currently stand, of getting this one done before the month is out.
A massive thank you to Ben for providing us with some insight there on the latest regarding Youri Tielemans. Some interesting stuff, and it does seem as though, you know, the confidence that Arsenal have to try and get that deal done soon could be the decisive factor whether or not Arsenal indeed do manage to pull it off. Speaking of talking about Youri Tielemans, though, let's go into the second part of the show, which of course is to look into the player statistically. We start off with the player overview courtesy of FB Ref, looking into some of the statistics and how he compares to players in his position across the European Elite 5 leagues. Looking at the percentiles where he stands out, we're looking at a player, you know, for his position that is up there as one of the higher goal scorers and certainly one of the higher shot takers in his position. Also one of the higher assisters too. His creativity and the goal scoring abilities from midfield would certainly add to a lot of what Arsenal need. Progression-wise, comes out really well in the 88th percentile there, and progressive passes being recovered as well is very high at 79. Looking now into the kind of more energetic and defensive side of his game, this is where he falls down slightly. In fact, I was on a very good conversation with the guys over at the Arsenal Therapy podcast about this, how Tielemans isn't going to give you necessarily everything you want from a defensive sense, but he does certainly bring you a lot more going forwards. Let's start to have a look at how he compares then to some other players. Of course, we need to compare him to some current Arsenal players. So we're looking at Xhaka and Partey statistics as well. And we're going to take a look at another midfielder in the Premier League that Arsenal have been linked to and make some comparisons to Ruben Neves as well. So let's kick off with the heat maps. What you first of all see from Tielemans is that he's playing mainly on that right-hand side. He can play on the left-hand side and does. And when you think about where he would play, operating on the right is an interesting part of it, because people talk about maybe not having enough to cover Martin Odegaard if he's not available. And I think this versatility of Tielemans to be able to play on both the right and left-hand sides offers plenty to Arsenal if they wanted to, say, have someone that could replace Odegaard if he wasn't available. But his versatility to play on the left means that he can, of course, operate in that Xhaka role that has been taken up in the last half of the season. If we then move forward to the passing side of things, similar to the other players in this list here, he comes out with a similar amount of passing frequency. But in terms of accuracy, he's higher than that of Partey, but does fall slightly behind that of Neves and Xhaka. You'll notice from Xhaka's passing that it may surprise you as we look at these comparisons. Moving into passing to the final third, Neves coming out on top with 10.3 passing to the final third per game. But it's Xhaka that really stars in this, with an 87.1% accuracy of 9.17 passes per 90 into the final third. Tielemans actually comes out the worst in this bracket, with the lowest accuracy bar Neves and the lowest frequency of passes into the final third. Perhaps an aspect of the season that he's had, and that's something that you probably need to take into account, is that reflective of what Tielemans provides is maybe not shown during this season, but perhaps looking at his statistics from this year in the worst, most unsettled phase of his career so far still gives you an insight into how good and how much potential he still has. Looking at passing into the box is where he shines, trying to be more direct with his play, comes out the highest with 2.6 passes into the box per 90, but not on the high end of accuracy. Xhaka actually comes out really well in this factor here, 2.44 passes into the box per 90. Certainly a part of his game that's been improved under Mikel Arteta, and with a really good accuracy there as well of 61.8%. A lot of these passes, what you see, are often when the wide player makes that incisive run into the box and Xhaka finds them. But sometimes he does like to play the ball direct into the striker, and that's what Tielemans would be looking to do as well. He's not the type to carry the ball particularly, though, and he will rely on his passing in the main. So that's why he's got the lowest progressive runs of any of the players on our list at 0.6 progressive runs per game. Takes the ball, passes it on, keeps the play ticking over. Moving into the shooting side of things, this is where, again, he shines quite well. 59 shots across the entirety of the Premier League season last year. 28.8% of those hit the target. He came out with 5 goals, you can see on that graphic there. In terms of where he's taken them from, he's got one from significantly far outside the box. The other 4 are inside, but they come from different areas. And it does intend to show also that he takes shots from range, definitely, but can get into the box and be a little bit more adventurous when need be. When you look at someone like Ruben Neves, nearly all of his shots are being taken from outside the box, and he's a much better long shot taker than Tielemans is, and he's probably one of the best, if not the best, at long shots in the Premier League. But he's not as adventurous, he's not as direct, and he won't add as much into the box as what Tielemans will to the team. Partey, of course, as we know, long shooting is not his forte, and Xhaka has got that to his game with that goal against Manchester United. Let's go into the defensive side of things and see how they all compare in the defensive sense. This, as I predicted, would be where Tielemans might not be as impressive. Despite that, though, he does come out with the highest percentage of defensive duels won at 61.1%. But one of the lower side, 6.85 defensive duels per 90. That said, it's only slightly lower than that of Neves and Partey. Xhaka comes out with the lowest frequency of defensive duels and the lowest frequency of these defensive duels won, which is surprising considering the fact when we did these in January and also in the last summer window, Xhaka came out pretty well. So maybe he hasn't succeeded as much at this season. In terms of how he fares in the air and defending these aerial duels, he comes out well. 52.9% of those aerial duels he wins. Although he's not getting involved in too many, just 1.62. He is winning the most out of all of these per aerial duel attempted. Interceptions wise, comes out the lowest, only slightly. They're quite close, all of these guys, with their interceptions. It's only between 3.87, which is Tielemans, and the highest at 4.38. Not one interception separating all of them, less than that, in fact. His reading of the game is good, but perhaps in a more energetic and committed season, you'd see him playing better. So I don't think 3.87 in a season, which he's been highly criticised for maybe not being on it as much as he has been in the past, because he is unsettled. I think he still comes out pretty well here. Again, losses. This has been the part of the season which has really fallen by the wayside for Tielemans. His concentration has been off, and I think that shows up in his losses. 9.19 per 90 being made, just slightly higher than that of Ruben Neves with 8.55. Both Partey and Xhaka coming out with an equal 7.99. The worry, though, for someone like Neves and Partey is that they lose the most of their own losses are in the own half. Neves 46.2%, the highest of any player on this list. When he does lose it, and he loses it the second highest, it does tend to be nearly 1 in 2 in his own half. Whereas Tielemans coming out much better at 38.6%. Looking at the recoveries, and you see here that Tielemans does like to venture into the opposition half and try and win balls in that kind of offensive area of the field. 47% of his recoveries are happening there. Only Granit Xhaka has a higher percentage rate of success in the opposition half at 49.1%. But Tielemans has got the lowest number of recoveries at 6.82. So there's a balance for you to work out. Clearances, in an Arsenal side that have been clearing the balls all day long this season, I'm actually quite surprised they only rank at 1 and 1.4 for Xhaka and Partey. Tielemans coming out with the second lowest, 1.08 per 90. But I imagine that would probably actually go up if he was to join Arsenal. Without skipping too far forwards, we'll go to fouls first. He's more disciplined than that of Partey and only slightly Xhaka. Neves coming out with the best fouls rate of only 0.74 per 90. Tielemans with a 0.98. And lastly, looking at pressures, this is where he does bring something more to the table. 16.7 pressures is more, nearly 4 more than Partey per 90 and more than 5 more per game than Granit Xhaka there. 16.7 pressures per 90, really strong, and actually coming out with a good and the highest success rate. So every time he presses, 29.9% of those pressures see the ball recovered within 5 seconds of that pressure. So that's a really good stat to have in his game as well. I think they all come out really good, in this block of players. I think what we've seen here is actually maybe how hard it's going to be to replace someone like Granit Xhaka from what he's provided to us this season. But Tielemans certainly adds more in an offensive sense. And even in a defensive sense, he came out better in the defensive duel aspect and the interception, looking at those kind of stats. It's actually quite surprising how well he deals with that. My initial interpretation of Tielemans before looking deeply into the statistics was that defensively he was going to rank awfully, but he doesn't actually fall that far away. The biggest takeaway whenever we look at midfielders is typically what Arts, the YouTuber, has said in the chat box, is that Xhaka is actually very underrated. The thing with Xhaka is obviously that we get our minds wrapped around these individual errors and mistakes that, of course, he's known for. But when you take those away, and I know it's hard to take those away, you actually find a very, very, very good player. And considering that Nemanja Matic is seemingly close to joining Roma, it doesn't look like that Xhaka's main potential suitor, which was Roma, will be coming in for him. So Tielemans may even partner Xhaka next season, with him not looking like he's going anywhere. We finish our tactical breakdowns, as always, with a dip into the chat box to take any questions that you guys might have in the last 5 or 10 minutes of the show. So if you indeed do have any questions relating to Tielemans and the midfield specifically, try and keep away from the strikers. We'll talk about them in tomorrow morning's 8 a.m. show, of course. But if you've got any questions about the central part of the midfield, throw them in and we'll try and take some of them for you. Just going to take a quick drink, though, because I am struggling. Here we go. Let's go to Social. Says, what role position do you think Youri would play with our current squad, and who could he potentially replace in the starting 11? I think the obvious answer would be Xhaka, despite the fact that I think Xhaka's done a fine job last season. We want to see some more adventurousness. We want to see a little bit more creativity and drive, and Tielemans would certainly add that. You play him on the left-hand side, Odegaard on the right, Partey sitting behind them. I think that's a really progressive midfield 3, an exciting midfield 3 that I think has the potential to be one of the best in the Premier League, in fact, if they can all stay fit, which is always going to be the question. Having Granit Xhaka as a player that's, a rotation option, someone that's going to be given opportunities some games and taken out for others, I think is a really good opportunity still. He's a very decent player, as the stats we've just looked at show. Let's go to Navarro, who says, Tom, wouldn't it be great to also buy Neves and compete with Partey? The problem with Neves is that he's going to cost you about 3 times as much, if not more, than what Tielemans is. I wouldn't pay upwards of £50 million, Ruben Neves. He's not a £50 million plus player, in my view. I mean, 50 million is about the max I think he would be worth, especially when a player like Tielemans, who is better in some aspects and not as good in others, is half the price. Yes, the contract is very different, of course, but why on earth you would overspend nearly 3 times what you would spend on Tielemans for Neves? It doesn't make all that much sense to do that. Jesusun, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, mate. Jesusun, I'm making it worse. We also need to account for Leicester's style of play. They play in transition and don't care about having possession as much. His technical ability means his stats will look better at Arsenal's. And it's certainly something that I would want to do, is look at his stats this season at Leicester and at the end of next season and see how kind of that changes. It's something I've actually wanted to do with Ramsdale and Ben White, to see how his stats change when they've moved to Arsenal. Certainly worth doing, to look at some of their comparisons. Teng Bang says, knowing the importance of Odegaard is for us, how will Tielemans fit into this team without sacrificing the former? Rotation. It's the same kind of argument about Saliba. How do we get Saliba into the team without sacrificing White and Gabriel? And the answer is rotation. We've got 4 competitions next season. We've got many more weeks where we've got 2 games a week. Rotation is going to be key. And rotating Odegaard with Tielemans with Xhaka, Lokonga and El Neni with Partey when need be, is going to be important to keep players fit, keep players competitive, and keep them, sharp for the big games. So it's all going to be about rotation next season. Salah says, any chance of us getting Kessie? No, he's already gone to Barcelona as far as I'm aware. Harry says, how likely do you think this deal is to get done? I'd give it a solid 8 out of 10 regarding my likelihood scale. This means absolutely nothing in the reality of things. So things change in football very quickly. But similar to Jesus, I'm fairly confident that they will be the 2 Premier League signings that Arsenal make this summer. But I don't want to give you any false promises, so do take that with a pinch of salt, because things change in football very, very quickly. Dean says, personally, I'd love to see a Tielemans and Basuma partnership next summer, or next season, rather. Yeah, of course, the Basuma link's always there. He's a very attractive profile of player. I think Premier League fans watching Brighton see him as a standout. How he would get on in Arsenal is difficult to know, but I think it's obvious that he would be, a very good asset. There's obviously social issues outside this and alleged cases that are still going on that need to be worked out. But Tielemans would be, I think, a really good option at the same time. Peanut Butter Jelly Time says, surely we can get better. Who? Tell me who. Who would be better than Tielemans to sign? I'd love to know your thoughts. Simon says, I know you hate backup talk, but why aren't we looking at a competitive option for Partey? Because we've got Lokonga, Simon, is the answer. Lokonga is someone who's being criminally under-talked about. I think that up until the Everton game that he was dropped unfairly, he was our best central midfielder. And I think Lokonga has got a lot of potential about him. Played a really good season for the opportunities he had. And I think next season, the Europa League is going to be a great chance for Lokonga to improve and develop even more. I don't think when he came into the team and he actually said as much that he expected to play as much as he did with Partey and Xhaka and El Neni there. He did play a fair amount and actually impressed in many, many of the games that he was there for. The Aston Villa game in particular at home was a highlight of his season, as was the Leicester game and the Watford game. I believe those 3 in particular, and the Newcastle home game too, I think. Those games were really, the ones that stood out the most in just off the back of my head and memory. Let's go to Manouche says, Lokonga's not ready yet. At what point does he become ready? And this is something that gets thrown out so quickly and so brashly without, dismissing a player. Not ready. Nope, seen what I've seen, not ready. That's not fair, and it's not fair to judge Lokonga and say he's not ready. He's not ready to play a full season. No, he's not. Is he ready to come in and play when Partey's not fit for 1, 2, 3 games? If not, you've got Tielemans and Xhaka. Yeah, absolutely. Is he ready to rotate? Absolutely. Are you going to make him ready by sitting him on the bench forever? No. You're going to make Lokonga ready by giving him minutes. That's the only way he gets ready. So let's, you got to give them time. You got to give them the opportunities. Let's go to Javi, who says, hey, Tom, been seeing links to Bissouma. Ideally, I would want both him and Tielemans. That would be an amazing midfield. I need to check up on these Bissouma links. I'll be talking about that, I'm sure, in tomorrow morning show if they indeed have any credibility or not, because we do break them down. Samia says, Tom, nobody is talking about bringing in a right forward / winger. Should be the priority alongside the other ones. I think Serge Gnabry is being talked about a lot and obviously plays a lot on the right. I think Nelson coming back complicates things a little. But perhaps, yeah, it depends what happens with Nicolas Pepe. And I expect if he moves on, that will be when things change. Sam, thank you so much for the donation. Thanks, Tom. Going to go watch Erdegaard smash a like, people. I think I even may have missed a super chat right at the start of the show, so apologies if that was the case. I'm just trying to scroll up very quickly, see if I can find it. I can. Ring the doorbell to enter the chat. It's shaped like a thumbs up. I love that, Sam. Thank you for the donations. They mean a lot, and I know that you help support the channel loads, and it's not taken for granted. Jack says, how much do we think we'll spend this summer? I think we'll spend in and around possibly more than we spent last summer. That's what I would expect to see from the club this summer. Hopefully, I'm right. South London's Funnest Beast says, don't you think Ruiz is a better option than Youri? Not necessarily. I think there would be two fairly similar options for Arsenal to go for, and I'd be happy to see either come into the team. Paul says, could Zinchenko replace Xhaka? Him and Tielemans would be amazing in our midfield. They would. I would just worry about what that means for the 6 position. I know people would think that Zinchenko could play there, and maybe, but when he plays in midfield, he tends to play a bit more expressively and a bit more progressively to occupy a 6 role. So Partey, Zinchenko, Tielemans, then what happens to Erdegaard? I like these kind of problems. It means we've got problems with selections, which is good. We don't want problems in regards to not having the depth. We want these problems to discuss and debate who should be starting and who shouldn't. A couple more, and then we are going to wrap up. Amir says, Tom, do you think we could get the most transfers done by our first game? I hope so. We have to. I think we have to target that to be the aim this summer. Zinchenko is sus defensively, says Deep 11. I'd have to check. I have not seen enough consistently to make some outright statement like that. And lastly, let's go to Sojo Goes So Slow, who says, I think Tielemans is exactly who Arteta needs, and for the price, you can't miss this one. £25 million for Youri Tielemans is a steal, and certainly something that Arsenal should be trying to wrap up ASAP, and hopefully, from the sounds of it, especially with the insight we've received from Ben Jacobs, and a massive thank you again to him. If you'd like to go and follow him on Twitter, you can do. It's at Jacobs Ben. Make sure you go and give him a follow. He's a very, very good one, and very rarely pokes Arsenal fans with a stick, which I've seen a couple of tweets do, but he is a very good follow for all your inside stories, so make sure you are giving Ben a follow on Twitter. I will see you tomorrow morning for the latest updates all around Arsenal. I hope you've enjoyed today's show. If you have, please do drop a like on the video to show your appreciation. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. If you want to hear my thoughts about the William Saliba news from earlier today, we did a stream almost as soon as that news broke, so make sure you go back and give that a watch. There's been already over 10,000 of you that have tuned in to check that one out, unsurprisingly so, considering the topic. But thank you so much for all of the support on the channel at the start of this window, and I'm looking forward to bringing you even more content as the window progresses, and hopefully we can talk about some fantastic signings very, very soon. I'll see you 8 a.m. sharp tomorrow, and as always, up the Arsenal.